I stayed late at school the day everything began to follow me. That in itself wasn't unusual. Teachers always assumed I was the responsible type, the quiet kid who volunteered to clean up after club meetings, the one who didn't complain when asked to lock the classroom or return supplies to the storage room. That afternoon, the art club had run late. Our teacher left in a hurry, apologizing, reminding me to turn off the lights and make sure the windows were shut. By the time I stepped out into the hallway, the school was already empty. No lockers slammed, no laughter echoed from the stairwells. Even the janitor's cot was gone. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, too loud in the silence, casting long pale streaks across the tiled floor. I checked my phone. 6:47 p.m. I should have been home by now. I slung my backpack over my shoulder and headed toward the main entrance. Every step felt louder than it should have, the sound of my shoes bouncing back at me from walls that suddenly felt closer. When I reached the glass doors, the sky outside had turned a deep bruised purple. Streetlights flickered on one by one like nervous eyes. The doors unlocked with a heavy click. Cold air rushed in as I stepped outside. That was when I noticed how quiet the neighborhood was. My school sat at the edge of town, surrounded by a long stretch of residential streets before reaching my house. Normally kids would still be out, playing basketball, riding bikes, yelling across lawns. But that evening, everything was still. Houses were dark. Cars were parked neatly in driveways. Untouched, I told myself. It was just dinner time. Still, the silence crawled under my skin. I started walking. At first, everything felt normal. My backpack bounced against my back. My phone buzzed with a message from my mom asking where I was. I typed back quickly, telling her I'd stayed late and I was on my way home. I didn't tell her how uneasy I felt. About 3 blocks from the school, I heard footsteps behind me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. I turned around. The street was empty. A long stretch of sidewalk disappeared into shadow behind me, lit only by spaced-out street lamps. Trees stood motionless, their branches tangled together like skeletal fingers. "Hello?" I called out, feeling stupid the moment the word left my mouth. No answer. I laughed quietly to myself and kept walking. The footsteps returned almost immediately. Slow, deliberate, too close. I told myself it was just an echo, maybe my own steps bouncing strangely between the houses. But when I slowed down, the sound didn't match me anymore. It lagged, 1 step behind. I glanced over my shoulder again. Still nothing. My heart beat faster. I turned the next corner quickly, hoping whoever or whatever was behind me would reveal itself or disappear. As soon as I turned, the footsteps stopped. The new street was darker. One of the street lights was broken, leaving a wide patch of darkness ahead. My house was still at least 15 minutes away. I considered calling my mom, but something stopped me. A strange pressure filled the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. My ears rang softly, and my breath fogged in front of me, even though it wasn't that cold. Then I saw it. A figure stood beneath the broken streetlight. It was tall. Too tall. Its outline barely fit in the space between the sidewalk and the road. At first, I thought it was just a man standing strangely, but as I got closer, the details refused to make sense. Its arms hung too low, nearly brushing the ground. Its head tilted at an angle no human neck could manage. The face was shadowed, swallowed by darkness, but I could tell it was watching me, waiting. I stopped walking. So did it. Neither of us moved for several seconds. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice shaking. The thing twitched, not stepped, twitched like a glitch in a broken video. It shifted forward without actually moving its legs. I stepped back. It moved closer. Panic exploded in my chest. I turned and ran. My backpack slapped against me as I sprinted down the street, lungs burning, legs screaming. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I could hear it now. Not footsteps, but a dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across concrete. I ran until my sides ached, until I nearly tripped, until I burst onto a brighter street where porch lights glowed warmly and a television flickered behind a living room window. I stopped, gasping for air. The dragging sound was gone. I bent over, hands on my knees, heart hammering so hard it hurt. After a few seconds, I straightened and looked around. Normal street, normal houses, no tall figure. I laughed shakily. You're tired, I told myself. That's all. I walked the rest of the way home without incident, constantly checking behind me. When I finally reached my house, I rushed inside and locked the door, pressing my back against it like something might try to force its way in. My mom scolded me for being late. I didn't tell her. I woke up at exactly 3:12 a.m. Not because of a sound, not because of a nightmare, but because of the overwhelming feeling that something was standing in my room. My eyes snapped open. Moonlight spilled through the thin gap in my curtains, painting silver lines across the walls. My bedroom looked normal. Posters peeling at the corners, clothes piled on the chair. My backpack slumped near the door where I'd dropped it the night before. I held my breath. Nothing moved. Still, the feeling didn't go away. It pressed down on my chest, heavy and cold, like invisible hands pinning me to the mattress. My ears rang softly, the same way they had on the street earlier that evening. Slowly, I turned my head toward the door. It was open. I was sure I'd closed it before going to bed. The hallway beyond was dark, but darker than it should have been, as if the shadows were thicker there, layered on top of each other. Then I heard it, a whisper. Evan. My name. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear. It sounded like it was being dragged out of someone's throat, stretched and distorted, like a recording played at the wrong speed. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might wake my parents. I'm dreaming, I whispered. The whisper came again, closer this time. Evan, come home. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them again, the doorway was empty. The whisper stopped. The pressure on my chest lifted. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. At school the next day, everything felt wrong. Not in an obvious way. No flickering lights, no strange figures lurking in corners. But like reality itself had shifted slightly off-center. Hallways felt longer. Classrooms felt narrower. People spoke just a little too quietly, their voices blurring together into a low, constant murmur. I told myself I was exhausted. That was when I noticed the scratches. They ran along my locker, thin and uneven, like someone had dragged their fingernails across the metal. 5 lines. Deep enough that the paint underneath showed through. I stared at them longer than I should have. Someone mess with your locker? My friend Josh asked, walking up beside me. I jumped. Yeah, maybe, I said quickly. Josh frowned. Those are new. They weren't there yesterday. My stomach tightened. I hadn't told anyone about what happened on the walk home. I hadn't told anyone about the dream. And yet somehow the evidence was appearing anyway. All day, I felt like I was being watched. Whenever I turned around, no one was there. But the feeling lingered, crawling up my spine, whispering that something was just out of sight. Standing behind doorways, watching from the ends of hallways. At lunch, I barely touched my food. You look like crap, Josh said, not unkindly. Did you hear anything weird last night? I asked suddenly. He blinked. Like what? I don't know. Noises, voices. Josh shook his head. Nope. Slept like a rock. I forced a laugh and nodded, but inside dread pooled in my stomach. It wasn't a dream. That afternoon, I left school earlier than usual. I didn't want to walk home alone again, but I didn't have a choice. My mom was working late, and Josh lived in the opposite direction. As I stepped outside, the sky was already clouded over. Grey clouds pressed low, smothering the sun. The air felt thick, heavy, like it was waiting for something. I took the same route as always. At first, nothing happened. Then, halfway down the second street, I heard it again. Footsteps. This time they didn't try to hide. They were slow and heavy, dragging slightly with each step. I could hear them clearly now, echoing off the pavement behind me. I didn't turn around. I picked up my pace. So did it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I yanked it out with shaking hands. Unknown number. Where are you going, Evan? My blood ran cold. I stopped walking. The footsteps stopped too. I stared at the screen, my fingers numb. My phone buzzed again. You took the long way. I spun around. The street behind me was empty. The air rippled. That was the only way I could describe it. Like heat rising from asphalt on a summer day, but thicker, darker. The space beneath a nearby streetlight warped and bent inward. Then it stepped forward. The thing from the night before unfolded itself from the shadows, its limbs bending the wrong way, its body stretching like it was struggling to fit into our world. Its face was clearer now. Not human, not really. Its mouth was too wide. Its eyes were sunken, hollow pits that reflected no light. It smiled. You forgot the path, it said, its voice layered, overlapping with itself. I can help you remember. I screamed and ran. The world blurred around me as I sprinted, my feet barely touching the ground. The thing didn't chase me like a person would. It slid after me, its body twitching forward in jerks, covering impossible distances in seconds. I turned corner after corner, not caring where I was going, only that I needed to get away. My lungs burned. I didn't go to school the next day. I told my mom I felt sick, which wasn't a lie. My stomach churned non-stop, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. She pressed her palm to my forehead, frowned, and told me to stay in bed. Before leaving for work, she reminded me to lock the doors and not open them for anyone. The moment she left, the house felt wrong. Not empty. Occupied. The silence was too deep, like something had swallowed all the normal sounds. The ticking clock in the hallway was gone. The refrigerator didn't hum. Even the air felt stale, unmoving. I sat on my bed, staring at the message carved into my wall. You are walking the wrong way. No matter how many times I blinked, it didn't fade. I tried scraping at the letters with my fingernails. The paint chipped, but the words stayed, etched deep into the drywall like scars. What do you want? I whispered. The house answered with a soft creak. Then, footsteps. Not outside, inside. They came from the hallway, slow and dragging, the same rhythm I'd heard on the street. Each step sent a vibration through the floor, through my bones. I froze. Evan, it called softly, from just beyond my door. My throat closed. It knew where I lived. I backed away until my calves hit the bed. My phone buzzed in my hand. Unknown number. You shouldn't hide from home. The doorknob began to turn. Not all the way, just enough to test it. Click, click. The door was locked. The footsteps stopped. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the whisper came again, closer than it should have been. "You remember the woods," it said, "don't you?" My head began to ache. Images pushed their way into my mind, trees towering overhead, a narrow dirt path twisting through darkness, the smell of damp earth and rusted metal. I clutched my head and cried out, "Stop!" The footsteps retreated. I waited until the house fell silent again before moving. My heart hammered as I crept to the door and pressed my ear against it. Nothing. I opened it. The hallway was empty, but the front door stood wide open. I didn't remember unlocking it. Cold air spilled inside, carrying the scent of wet leaves and soil. Outside, the sky had darkened unnaturally fast, clouds swirling low and heavy. I grabbed my jacket and stepped onto the porch. The street wasn't my street anymore. The houses were still there, but they leaned inward, warped and crooked like reflections in a funhouse mirror. Streetlights flickered, their light dim and sickly, and at the end of the road, the woods. They hadn't been there before. A thick wall of trees stood where the cul-de-sac should have been, branches tangled together so tightly they blocked out the sky. A narrow path cut through them, its entrance gaping like an open mouth. My phone buzzed. "This is the way you used to go." My legs moved before I could stop them. Each step toward the trees made my head throb harder, memories clawing their way back to the surface. Laughter, running footsteps, a dare. I was younger, middle school. I used to cut through the woods with Josh and some other kids to get home faster. We'd stop going that way after... I swallowed. After the disappearance, I stood at the edge of the trees, staring into the darkness beyond. The air inside them felt colder, heavier, like it pressed against my skin. I didn't mean to. I whispered. The woods answered with a low rustling sigh. I stepped onto the path. The moment I crossed the threshold, the world behind me vanished. No houses, no street, only trees. They stretched impossibly high, their branches interlocking overhead, blocking out what little light remained. The path beneath my feet twisted and shifted, roots snaking across it like veins. I walked for what felt like hours. My phone had no signal. The screen flickered, glitching in and out, occasionally flashing messages that vanished before I could read them. Then I heard crying. Soft at first, barely audible. I followed the sound, my chest tightening with every step. It led me off the main path to a small clearing. Someone sat in the center, knees pulled to their chest. A kid, younger than me, maybe 10 or 11. "Hey," I said cautiously, "are you lost?" The kid looked up. It was me, younger, smaller, dirt-smudged, eyes wide with fear. I staggered back. The younger version of me stood slowly, staring with recognition. "You left," he said, his voice trembling. What?" "You ran," he said. "You didn't look back." The clearing darkened. From between the trees, something massive shifted. But the clearing collapsed in on itself, the world tearing apart like paper. I ran. Branches tore at my clothes. Roots grabbed at my feet. The thing's voice echoed all around me, overlapping, multiplying. "Almost home! Almost home! Almost home!" I burst out of the woods and into my backyard. I collapsed onto the grass, gasping for air. The woods were gone. The house stood quiet and normal, but my phone buzzed one last time. One more walk. I didn't go inside right away. I lay there on the grass, staring up at the sky, half expecting it to split open and swallow me whole. My lungs burned, my clothes were torn, and my hands shook so badly I could barely curl my fingers. The backyard looked normal. Too normal. The fence was straight again. The trees beyond it were ordinary oaks, and not the towering, suffocating giants from the woods. My house stood behind me. Lights on, warm and familiar. But I knew better now. I pushed myself to my feet and checked my phone. 6:47 p.m. The same time as the night this all started. A cold realization crept over me. It wasn't just following me, it was looping me. The back door opened. "Evan," my mom called. "Why are you just standing out there?" I turned slowly. She stood in the doorway, concern etched across her face. She looked tired like she always did after work. Normal, human. Relief nearly knocked me off my feet. I thought you were at work," I stammered. "I came home early," she said. "You didn't answer your phone." I glanced down. My phone screen was dark. No messages, no unknown number, just my cracked lock screen. I walked toward her cautiously, every nerve screaming. When I stepped onto the porch, she reached out and touched my arm. Her hand was warm, solid. I exhaled shakily. Inside, the house felt alive again. The clock ticked, the fridge hummed, the TV murmured softly from the living room. For a moment, I almost believed it was over. Dinner passed quietly. I barely ate. My mom kept glancing at me, like she wanted to ask what was wrong but didn't know how. That night, I lay awake, listening. Nothing followed me into my dreams. The next day was the last normal one I remember. I went to school. The scratches on my locker were gone. My wall at home was smooth again. No sign of the carved message. Josh joked about me ditching class the day before. Teacher scolded me for missed work. Life slid back into place as if nothing had happened. But I noticed the details. The way people avoided the street near the woods. The way teachers shut the windows before dusk. The way no one ever walked home alone after staying late. At lunch, I asked Josh about the woods. He stiffened. "Why?" he asked. "Do you remember cutting through them when we were kids?" He looked away. "We're not supposed to talk about that." "About who?" I pressed. Josh's jaw tightened. "About you." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "There was an investigation," he said quietly. "Years ago. A kid went missing in those woods. Same age we were." My heart pounded. "What kid?" Josh swallowed. "You." The cafeteria noise faded. "That's not funny," I whispered. "I'm not joking," he said. "You disappeared for 3 days. They found you wandering near the edge of town, barefoot and screaming. You didn't remember anything. After that, you stopped taking the shortcut." I felt dizzy, the younger version of me in the clearing. "You stayed." The bell rang, sharp and sudden. Josh flinched. "They said you were lucky," he added. "Said something let you go." Something. That evening, I stayed late again. I didn't mean to. I was in the library reading old local newspapers, trying to find something, anything, that explained what had happened to me. There were articles about missing people, about strange lights in the woods, about hikers who vanished and later returned. Different, changed. At 6:47 p.m., the lights flickered. The librarian announced closing time. My chest tightened. I packed up slowly, dread settling in my stomach like a stone. Outside, the sky was already dark. "You don't have to," a voice said behind me. I turned. Josh stood there, backpack slung over one shoulder. "I'll walk with you," he said. Relief flooded me. We walked in silence for the first few blocks. The streetlights buzzed overhead. Everything felt normal. Then we reached the corner, the one where the broken streetlights used to be. Josh stopped. "I can't go any further," he said. "Why not?" I asked. He looked at me, eyes sad. "This is where you always turn back." My phone buzzed. "Walk alone." I shook my head. "No, I'm not doing this again." Josh took a step back. "I'm sorry," he whispered. And then he was gone. The street twisted, the lights dimmed, the woods rose at the end of the road, branches reaching. Footsteps sounded behind me. Slow, dragging. I didn't run this time. I turned around. It stood there taller than ever, its shadow swallowing the street. You're close now, it said gently, just like before. What do you want? I demanded. It tilted its head. Balance. Images flooded my mind. Missing posters, Korean parents, empty bedrooms, people who never came back. You left a piece of yourself, it continued. Someone else took your place. My chest ached. The kid in the woods, I whispered. Me? It smiled wider. One must walk the path. I took a shaky breath. Then I'll finish it. The thing stepped aside, revealing the path into the woods. For the first time, it bowed. The woods waited. They didn't rush me. They didn't pull me forward or try to drag me in. They simply waited. Branches arching overhead like a doorway that had been open for years. I stood at the edge of the street, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to run the other way. But there was no other way. The thing loomed behind me, silent now. It didn't need to speak anymore. We both understood the rules. I stepped onto the path. The world folded inward. The sounds of the town vanished, replaced by the low hum of something ancient and breathing beneath the ground. The trees closed in, their trunks impossibly close. Bark scarred with old carvings. Names, dates, please. Some of the names felt familiar. I walked. Each step made my memories sharper. I remembered the dare. I remembered Josh laughing, calling me a coward. I remembered running ahead, deeper into the woods than we'd ever gone before. I remembered getting lost. The path twisted, doubling back on itself, changing when I wasn't looking. Every time I hesitated, the trees leaned closer, urging me forward. You ran before, a voice whispered from the darkness. I was scared, I whispered back. You're still scared. I nodded. But I'm walking. The clearing appealed suddenly. Moonlight spilled down onto familiar ground. The air was cold and still, heavy with the scent of damp leaves. And there he was. The younger me sat in the center, just like before. He looked up as I approached, eyes wide but hopeful. You came back, he said. I said I would, I replied. Behind him the thing stirred. It was no longer pretending to be human-shaped. Its form stretched across the clearing, woven into the shadows of the trees themselves. Eyes opened along its surface, watching, waiting. Only one leaves, it said. That is the balance. I swallowed. I know. The younger me stepped closer. Do I have to stay? My throat tightened. Yes, I said softly. But not like this. I knelt in front of him. You're not trapped, I continued. You're not forgotten. You're the part of me that didn't make it out. The fear, the memory. His expression shifted, confusion giving way to understanding. If you stay here alone, I said, it keeps hunting, keeps taking. But if I remember, if I carry you with me? The thing recoiled slightly. That is not the rule, it hissed. I stood. Rules change, I said, when the truth is faced. The younger me reached out and took my hand. The woods screamed. The clearing shook violently as the shadows tore themselves apart. The thing thrashed, its form unraveling, eyes blinking out one by one. You must choose, it roared. Stay or leave. I choose to walk with myself, I said. Light flooded the clearing. The younger me dissolved into warmth, memories pouring into my chest. Fear, pain, loneliness, but also strength. I staggered, nearly falling to my knees as years of suppressed terror slammed into me all at once. The thing shrieked, collapsing inward, folding into the earth like a wound sealing shut. The woods went silent. The path straightened. I walked. I emerged onto my street just as the sun began to rise. Birds chirped. A car passed in the distance. Everything looked ordinary, but I felt different. Whole. I went home and slept for 12 hours. When I woke up, the air felt lighter. The woods were still there at the edge of town, but the path was gone. Just trees. Normal trees. People stopped disappearing. The missing posters came down. Life moved on. Sometimes, when I walk home alone at dusk, I feel a familiar chill, a memory brushing against my thoughts. But I don't run. I walk, because I know the way now. Whatever waits in the dark no longer follows me. I'm already home. The end?